ascending slowly with unconscious steps, a foundling of the gods, he wanders here, like a child soul left near the gates of hell, fumbling through fog in search of paradise.
Good morning on this rainy Christmas morning. A few brave souls have ventured out. Just a little while back, I called my mother in Wisconsin, and there it was about 10 below with winds about 50, 60 kilometers an hour. So, and then my brothers were visiting, and one has to drive back about 50 miles back to his. So I said, "You're going to brave the weather?" And, "Oh, it's not too bad." There was some snow, but they didn't get too much, I guess, about an inch of snow or so. Yeah, just now they have a bomb cyclone covering much of the U.S., so all across the country, and some of the lowest temperatures they've had in like 40 years. Wisconsin. Yeah. Well, not too much, because they're on the western side of the lake. If you're on the eastern side, you get a lot of lake effect snow. Buffalo, I think, was buried with snow like they usually are. So we're reading in Book 2, the Book of the Traveler of the Worlds, following Aswapati through the worlds, through the kingdoms of the little life, here in Canto 4. Last time we were reading, I'll just read a brief passage to kind of put us in our place, on page 135 at the break. He says, "In this slow ascension, So he's ascending through the worlds, the inner worlds. He must follow her pace. That's nature's pace. Even from her faint and dim subconscious start. So only can earth's last salvation come. For so only could he know the obscure cause of all that holds us back and baffles God in the jail delivery of the imprisoned soul. Along swift paths of fall, through dangerous gates, he chanced into a gray obscurity, teeming with instincts from the mindless gulfs that push to wear a form and win a place. So here he is kind of at the borderline between life and matter, where life is just struggling to emerge out of matter. So as we read further into this realm, I think there's a kind of a few different levels of meaning that we can draw from it. One is his description of these subtle planes, the subtle plane of consciousness within, in which Aswapati has plunged. So there are these subtle worlds. At another level, it kind of is describing life here in the physical world as it emerged out of matter, just the very beginnings of life. And then I think there's also a kind of significance for us too, because we also carry within us, even now, in our higher level of evolution, these beginnings. They still kind of influence our experience of life. So we have this kind of strand of our own being that we experience. So now we have come to page 136 at the break. So we'll begin reading there. And Helmut, would you like to start?
A wide, unquiet mist of seeking space, a rayless region swallowed in vague swaths that seemed unnamed, unbodied, and unhoused, a swaddled vision and formless mind, asked for a body to translate its soul. Its prayer denied, it fumbled after fall. As yet not powered to think, hardly to live, it opened into a weird and pygmy world where this unhappy magic had its source. On dim confines where life and matter meet, he wandered among things half seen, half guessed, pursued by ungrasped beginnings and lost ends. There, life was born, but died before it could live. There was no solid ground, no constant drift. Only some flame of mindless will had power. Himself was dim to himself, half felt, obscure, as if in a struggle of the void to be.
Thank you. Let's pause there.
Why do you think you chose the word magic? Some happy magic.
Which one?
159.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a strange realm where there's hardly form. You know, it's almost like kind of a life energy that's seeking a form and that is very evanescent. It's just kind of coming and going. So I suppose it's kind of related to that, where this life, it's just emerging, but it's not strong enough really to survive for, more than an instant or... So it's a kind of a very strange kind of realm. It's just at that borderline between matter, unconscious, inanimate matter, and life. Kind of awakening. Huh? Yeah, also... Yes, we have this realm within us as well. We have our physical matter, and so we have these, kind of first stirrings of life, of instincts kind of arising out of our physical being, striving for, a place in our life or, a kind of a form, a settled place. And yet also they are, they come and then they go kind of quickly, and nothing is stable at that level.
Don't you feel that Srivindra really likes this word magic? And here he says unhappy magic, but then our transformation, the magic of our whole transformation, is the secret of enlightenment. So he uses it that way also. And in other places in Savitri, because the word magic has this mystical side, but not the sort of weird side that we use it today, because he's using a more classical sense of magic, in a very good sense, and that's why I think he calls this one the unhappy one, because there is the happy one.
Mm-hmm. So when you say classical sense, what do you mean?
Well, this is the realm of the mages and the realm of the wise people and all of that. It's in the biblical tradition, it's in Greek tradition, it's in those traditions. And so he would use this word a little different than we would use it today. They would think of magicians and things like that. That is a sort of faith.
Yeah, here it's kind of a use of occult force or something like that. So as he describes this realm, he kind of describes it as a kind of a mist or fog where things are unclear and the mind is kind of covered over, swaddled. We wrap a baby in a kind of a blanket to keep it safe and warm, but also to keep it from moving and hurting itself. So here the mind is swaddled, constricted in that way. And he talks about this life energy seeking for a form but not really finding it, then seeking for thought but not able to find that either.
It is also that it is praying.
Yeah.
What is praying? What is
It's prayer denied.
what is it? This is 156 and prayer denied. This is it's praying.
Which line? Which line?
156. Space.
Yeah, I mean, the only subject there is that seeking space, but we might think of it also as this life instinct emerging out of matter. But it's here, the only subject is this wide, unquiet mist of seeking space. Or we could, it may also refer to this swaddled, visionless, and formless mind. So a kind of a mind that's restricted, covered over, asking for form to translate its thought, its soul. And he seems to be identified with this realm because he says himself was dim to himself, half felt, obscure, as if in a struggle of the void to be. So Aswapati is identified with this realm. Nitya, would you like to continue? As if in a struggle of the void.
As if in a struggle of the void to be. In strange domains where all was living sense, but mastering thought was not nor cause nor rule. Only a crude child heart cried for toys of bliss. Mind flickered, a disordered infant glow, and random shapeless energies drove towards form and took each wisp fire for a guiding sun. This blindfold force could place no thinking step. Asking for light, she followed darkness's clue. An inconscient power groped towards consciousness. Matter smitten by matter glimmered to sense. Blind contacts, slow reactions beat out sparks of instinct from a cloaked subliminal bed. Sensations crowded, dumb substitutes for thought. Perception answered nature's wakening blows, but still was a mechanical response. A jerk, a leap, a start in nature's dream, and rude, unchastened impulses jostling ran, heedless of every motion but their own, and darkling clashed with darker than themselves, free in a world of settled anarchy.
Thank you. Here we get some hints of how it applies to our life. This crude child heart crying for toys of bliss, which is something sometimes we do, I think. And this line, and took each wisp fire for a guiding sun. So we see little flickers of light or of hope or of something that attracts us, and we run towards that as maybe that's what we should be following or seeking or doing. Asking for light, she followed darkness' clue. As we live in this kind of ignorance, surrounded by ignorance, and we're seeking for light, and so we just see a little shadow moving here or there and go after that as a possible clue to where we should move. An inconscient power groped towards consciousness. But I also get the sense in these latter lines of almost like single-cell organisms kind of bumping into each other and responding to the influences, the waking blows of nature outside of them, responding mechanically.
Lady Melody has all these small flying lights are in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Something process in that physical the meeting physically and light comes out.
Mm-hmm. Ronnie, would you continue? Yes.
The need to exist, the instinct to survive, engrossed the tense, precarious moment's will, and an unseeing desire felt out for food. The gusts of nature were the only law. Force wrestled with force, but no result remained. Only were achieved a nescient grasp and drive, and feelings and instincts knowing not their source. Sense pleasures and sense pangs soon caught, soon lost, and the brute motion of unthinking lives. It was a vain, unnecessary world whose will to be brought poor and sad results, and meaningless suffering and a gray unease. Nothing seemed worth the labor to become.
Thank you. Of course, even at the level of humanity, we have all different strata of human beings that are at all the different levels of life. So there are also people who are really at this lower level of life, and their minds are undeveloped at this point. And so they live life kind of through their instincts, through the life forces, their impulses, whatever moves them at the moment. And often coming into conflict with others then around them. And all of us do this to some extent, some more than others. But that life, instinctual, led by desires, impulses, kind of leads to this meaningless suffering and gray unease, and sometimes may not seem worth the labor to become, to develop.
To the next line. We have also some explanation for this unnecessary word. It was a way unnecessary.
Yeah, that's, but as Ronnie points out in the next section, he's going to say, but not, he didn't judge it this way. So that's one perspective. It may feel like that when you're in the midst of that kind of a life where there's just struggle and suffering and conflict and nothing seems to come of it. At that point, it may seem meaningless. We look at the conflicts, the struggles in the world, and we have to struggle to find meaning in that. Why this constant fighting, killing? What reason? What does it accomplish? But with a vaster vision that can look at things from a wider perspective across a vaster span of time, then we may be able to find a meaning in it. And that's what Asapati is able to do. So we can continue, Margaret.
But judge not so his spirit's vacant eye, as shines a solitary witness star that burns apart, light's lonely sentinel in the drift and teeming of a mindless night. A single thinker in an aimless world, awaiting some tremendous dawn of God. He saw the purpose in the works of time. Even in that aimlessness, a work was done. Pregnant with magic will and change divine. The first writings of the cosmic serpent force uncoiled from the mystic ring of matter's trance. It raised its head in the warm air of life. It could not cast off yet night's stiffening sleep, or wear as yet mind's wonder flecks and streaks, put on its jeweled hood, the crown of soul, or stand erect in the blaze of spirit's sun. As yet were only seen fullness and force, the secret crawl of consciousness to light through a fertile slime of lust and maddening sense, beneath the body's crust of sickened self, a tardy fervent working in the dark, the turbid yeast of nature's passionate change, ferment of the soul's creation out of Maya.
Thank you. Like B said, Sri Aurobindo seems to like the word magic. He uses again. Pregnant with magic will and change divine. It's often these sudden changes that take place where I think he uses that. Unexpected changes coming from an occult source that we can't see. I would like to read a little passage from Shraddhavan about this. She says, this stage represents the first writhings of the cosmic serpent force. Serpents symbolize energy and force. Writhings are the coiling movements made by snakes. The universal dynamic force of evolution is just starting to wake up. It has been rolled up, asleep, in the mystic ring of matter's trance, like a snake hibernating in cold weather. Reptiles need warmth in order to be able to move. Now, in the warm air of life, the evolutionary force is beginning to wake up, to uncoil and move. This is the first stage of the emergence of life in matter. At first, the serpent force cannot cast off its stiffening sleep of night, of unconsciousness. In cold countries, snakes hibernate through the winter, and if you come across them, they may be absolutely stiff, like a piece of wood. Similarly, the life force, when it first starts to wake up, is rigid and unable to move freely. But later on, it will awaken fully and develop a beautiful skin to match its growing mind consciousness. Since mind is a state of mingled knowledge and ignorance, the cosmic serpent will not become fully golden at first, but will get flecks patches and streaks, lines of brightness and color. It will develop a beautiful jeweled hood, the sign of the soul. Eventually, no longer writhing on the ground, it will be able to stand erect in the blaze of Spirit's sun. Sometimes we see images of the Buddha, protected by this cosmic snake with its hood open, wearing a jeweled crown. As all that is yet to come, for now Aswapati is observing the first writhings of the cosmic serpent force, expressed in the first primitive life forms.
He's also coming, this what Aswapati is doing, stepping back and look at the whole evolution, understand the process.
Right.
Is also what Savitri is advised to do, to change in the end of Savitri, to change, to bring her will forward, to go on a higher plane and see what the process is and what she likes to bring forward.
Right.
And it's something in a way which we should be trained to see it and not to get lost in all these small things, daily life and hang on things.
Yeah, that's our tendency to get caught up in the movements of the present moment and not step back like Sri Aurobindo and Mother tell us and look at it objectively, look at it from a distance. Understand where it's coming from, where it's moving towards. But this life force, this life instinct, doesn't have that capacity as yet of this mind, objective, reflective. So it just has to struggle through. B, would you continue?
A heavenly process donned this gray disguise of fallen ignorance in its covered night, labored to achieve its dumb, unseemly work. A camouflage of the inconscious need to release the glory of God in nature's mud. His sight, spiritual in embodying orbs, could pierce through the gray phosphorescent haze and scan the secrets of the shifting flux that animates these mute and solid cells and leads the thought and longing of the flesh and the keen lust and hunger of its will. This too he tracked along its hidden stream and traced its acts through a miraculous fount.
Thank you. Let's pause. So Aswapati is seeing the meaning in all of this. He sees that there's unfolding a heavenly process which has donned, is wearing this gray disguise. And it's working, it's laboring to achieve its dumb, unseemly work. In these first beginnings, it seems unseemly, kind of not very nice to look at.
And that is a fallen ignorance. No?
It's a fallen ignorance in the night, a covert night. And it's a camouflage of the inconscious need to release the glory of God in nature's mud. A camouflage, it's something that's worn in order to mask the appearance. So soldiers wear camouflage so they can't be seen in the forest. So something is working through these kind of unseemly actions of life in its lower forms. Under that camouflage of that unseemly work, something deeper is happening. This release of the glory of God is slowly taking place. Under that camouflage, hidden behind it.
This glory of God in the mire and in the mud is such a constant theme. It seems like this is one of the fundamental, how would you say it, symbolic transformations represented by the lotus. And that's why in your visual and in the symbol, you have that lotus. It seems to me because it does that.
Yeah.
Out of the compost comes this beauty. So he's reinforcing these things from different perspectives. I think in a way we can't miss it.
Yeah, that's a perfect symbol of what he says here, his symbol. So Aswapati could see through this gray phosphorescent haze, this obscurity of the unfolding of life in this mist and fog, this camouflage. So in that he could scan the secrets of the shifting flux that animates these mute and solid cells and leads the thought and longing of the flesh and the keen lust and hunger of its will. So he's taking us into the cells and their first movements and into the base instincts of life. Through all of these, he could see that higher significance. And he's tracing that meaning, tracked along its hidden stream and traced its acts to a miraculous fount. So he's looking for the source of all of that. Helmut, would you like to continue?
A mystic a mystic presence none can probe nor rule, creator of this game of ray and shade. In this sweet and bitter paradoxical life, asks from the body the soul's intimacies, and by the swift vibration of a nerve, links its mechanic throbs to light and love. It summons the spirit's sleeping memories up from subconscious depth beneath time's foam, oblivious of their flame and happy truth. Arriving with heavy eyes that hardly see, they come disguised as feelings and desires, like weeds upon the surface, float a while and rise and sink on a somnambulist tide. Impure, degraded, though her motions are, always a heaven truth roots in life's deeps. In her obscurest members burns that fire.
Thank you. I'll read again a little from Shraddhavan about this, which is quite interesting. She says, with his power of spiritual vision, Aswapati is able to trace the course of that hidden stream of life energy back to its source. He finds that it originates from a miraculous fount, a spring, like the source of a stream or river, which he describes. He finds that the source of this flow of life energy is a mystic presence. Nobody can probe or rule that mysterious presence, which is the creator of this game of ray and shade, the life of this world of dualities and contradictions, in which sunlight and shadow alternate, which is both sweet and bitter, which is paradoxical, apparently self-contradictory. The mystic presence, which is the source of all life, wants physical bodies to become able to experience and express the soul's intimacies, the subtle sensations and emotions that are characteristic of the soul. To make this possible, it develops a nervous system which links the mechanical movements of the body with conscious sense perceptions. and with emotions. And then skipping ahead a little bit of her explanation, she says, the motions or movements of the life force and matter are often impure and degraded because of her fallen state under the domination of inconscience and ignorance. But nevertheless, Sri Aurobindo tells us a divine truth is always brooding in her depths, and even in her darkest parts, her obscurest members, the fire of that mystic presence is burning. The heaven truth, which is brooding in her depths, will give birth to diviner things. The origin of life is divine, and so all the expressions of life must also become divine. In the present stage of evolution, the movements of the life force may be impure and degraded, but Sri Aurobindo does not want us to reject life. We may reject the impurities, but life itself is a divine power which we should honor and treasure. This is one of the ways in which Sri Aurobindo's view is different from that of many other spiritual paths. Many spiritual seekers feel that in order to reach a higher consciousness, they must reject and exclude the ordinary movements of life. But Sri Aurobindo is repeatedly telling us that life itself is a divine power and is destined to become able to express itself divinely, even here in the material world. We should not try to erase it or suppress it and deprive ourselves of that divine force of creativity and its power for positive change. So we see that it is a divine force that is working in life through these obscure forms of life. Yeah, I don't know the number, but
A touch of God's rapture in creation's acts. A lost remembrance of felicity lurks still in the dumb roots of death and birth. The world's senseless beauty mirrors God's delight. That rapture's smile is secret everywhere. It flows in the wind's breath, in the tree's sap. Its hued magnificence blooms in leaves and flowers. When life broke through its half drowse in the plant that feels and suffers but cannot move or cry, in beast and in winged bird and thinking man, it made of the heart's rhythm its music's beat. It forced the unconscious tissues to awake and ask for happiness and earn the pang and thrill with pleasure and laughter of brief delight and quiver with pain and crave for ecstasy.
thank you. Sri Aurobindo shows us, gives us evidence of this secret presence that is behind life and is emerging, and how it expresses itself even in the physical life of plant and animal. The world's senseless beauty mirrors God's delight. So it gives expression to that in its own ways. And that rapture's smile is secret everywhere. If we look, we can always find that delight and beauty in nature.
Beautiful combination, not just smile. And the mother also said one cannot smile.
It also interestingly, the mother has said the psychic element is very strong in plants and flowers, and much more than even we. Its expression is so close to the divine, even though the other aspects of life that is discussed.
Right. Yeah, and mankind, the mind overshadows it much more. There it can express itself, but mainly through its forms of beauty. But here he's also suggesting that this divine presence is expressive also in beast and in winged bird and thinking man. So also in the life of humanity, we also can find this beauty, the smile and laughter of children, and the many different forms of life also carry this delight.
There's some example about it is interesting. The Hans Wilson is its music speed.
Yeah.
Can say more about this.
And it's just that also the physical life translates these deeper realities of the divine. So the heart's beating is kind of symbolic of this rhythm of nature and of the divine.
I really like how he put the leaves together with the flowers. The leaves are blooming too.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that thing the Sufi said, every leaf is a scripture. Different, because every leaf is different. So written in every leaf is the truth. But I never thought of it, of a leaf blooming.
You have this in certain plants, for instance, in protection. It's red, petals are actually leaves.
And I think it's interesting that he expresses this reality, I guess, that the plants also feel and suffer. We often don't think of that when we're cutting them.
There's also research about this, that I don't know, in the 70s or 80s, that they had 3 rooms with plants, and in one room, one went under the scissor and cut it always, the leaf. And in the other rooms, in the other there was playing music from Beethoven also. And when this man came in the room with the scissor or with the cutter, the leaves were shaking. They really expressed, they could be measured. And in the other rooms, the music they just had in open and heavy here. So they did the research.
Mother would sometimes talk about flowers responding to people, that she would give some people a flower and it would just wilt within minutes, and other people it would, become lively and blossom.
In the type of music, I think Mother had made an experiment of disciples. And this I have made my own experiment when I was very cold in the US, and it did not grow, but I started playing Mother's music, and I was not really liking it before, but I myself went through something and I had certain feeling. And I played it for the plants, and suddenly I was seeing the plants growing. I don't know, it was probably I had faith or something. And I started reading about that. I realized that experiment was done way back when she was in my body. One of the disciples, in the type of music, they respond more to the more spiritual, classical music, and very fast paced, and jazz or very harsh music. They will respond to soft music.
They have proved this even in a grander scale in agriculture. Only fertilizers are faster and cheaper than Mozart.
Yeah. Shall we continue, Rani?
Imperative, voiceless, ill understood, too far from light, too close to being's core, born strangely in time from the eternal bliss, it presses on heart's core and vibrant nerve. Its sharp self-seeking tears our consciousness. Our pain and pleasure have that sting for cause. Instinct with it, but blind to its true joy, the soul's desire leaps out towards passing things. All nature's longing drive, none can resist, comes surging through the blood and quickened sense. An ecstasy of the infinite is her cause. It turns in us to finite loves and lusts, the will to conquer and have, to seize and keep, to enlarge life's room and scope and pleasure's range, to battle and overcome and make one's own, the hope to mix one's joy with others' joy, a yearning to possess and be possessed, to enjoy and be enjoyed, to feel, to live.
Thank you. This brief passage here, Bindu, gives us something of the origin and meaning of life and also its fundamental nature in the span of 15 lines. And the reason why it's difficult to perceive and understand, because it's too far from the light, too close to being's core. It's born strangely in time from the eternal bliss. But that's its origin, this eternal bliss. And we could say also its fundamental purpose for being, to enjoy this bliss. But being born in matter, it has to first move through this physical nerve in order to become conscious. So its sharp self-seeking tears our consciousness. Our pain and pleasure have that sting for cause. It's trying to arise out of this physical matter, to become self-conscious, self-aware, and to enjoy that greater bliss from which it's come. We're instinct with it, but blind to its true joy. And instead, the soul's desire leaps out towards passing things. So in the lower consciousness, we're seeking that original bliss from which life fell, but we seek it in the passing movements of something that attracts us here or there. But an ecstasy of the infinite is her cause. And it turns in us to finite loves and lusts, the will to conquer and to have, to seize and keep. It's the very nature of life, to enlarge life's room and scope and pleasure's range, to battle and overcome and make one's own, the hope to mix one's joy with others' joy, a yearning to possess and be possessed, to enjoy and be enjoyed, to feel, to live. This is life. Shall we continue? Margaret, you're next.
Here was his early brief attempt to be, its rapid end of momentary delight, whose stamp of failure haunts all ignorant life, inflicting still its habit on the selves, the phantom of a dark and evil start, ghost-like pursues, all that we dream and do. Although on earth are firm, established lives, a working of habit or sense of law, a steady repetition in the flux, yet are its roots of will ever the same. These passions are the stuff of which we are made. This was the first cry of the awaking world. It clings around us, still, and clamps the God.
Thank you. So we see that all of these movements of life are also part of our own human experience. We carry all of this within us. Even this obscure movements of life emerging out of matter, still that same characteristic is there in our lives. That rapid end of momentary delight, even the delights that we experience are momentary. And that stamp of failure haunts all ignorant life. And he says, although on earth are firm, established lives, still, what is that? The nature of that? A working of habit or a sense of law, a steady repetition in the flux. Yet are its roots of will ever the same. These passions are the stuff of which we are made. This was the first cry of the awaking world. It clings around us still and clamps the God. Because we're made of this, it becomes very difficult to overcome, if not impossible. It holds us back.
This part about the cells, we always going to the cells. This habit is in the cells, and Mother, worked so hard on the cells for the transformation, but it's all already here in Savitri, and this is the second or third time, just what we've been reading, that he is emphasizing the cells more than physical life. Or the personality, this cellular level is talking about, which I never noticed before.
And that is what she was specifically working on, was overcoming those habits of the cells, becoming conscious at that level of her cells, and overcoming those habits and transferring it to some kind of divine instigation, impulsion, instead of this habitual movement. And that seems to be the secret of the transformation that's necessary to work at that level. All the changes that we can make at the level of mind and even at life, controlling the vital nature and all of that, none of that can really be complete until we establish it in the cells of the body as well, right down into the physical. Was the necessity for that supramental descent into the physical itself. Otherwise, we can have spiritual experiences, but it never becomes stable. It never becomes a permanent possession. Always the physical matter pulls one back down into it, into that level, and until that is transformed, we cannot be fully transformed. So I think we're going to stop there for today. Or maybe, now B, why don't you just finish this last passage here before the paragraph?
Start with
even when reason is born. Halfway down.
even when reason is born and soul takes form in beast and reptile and in thinking man, it lasts and is the fount of all their life. This too was needed, that breath and living might be the spirit in a finite, ignorant world, must rescue, so its prisoned consciousness forced out in little jets as at quivering points from the inconscience sealed infinitude. Then slowly it gathers mass, looks up at light. This nature lives tied to her origin. A clutch of nether force is on her still. Out of unconscious depths her instincts leap. A neighbor is her life, an insentient naught. Under this law, an ignorant world was made.
Thank you. So he reiterates that even in mankind, this level of life, of lower life, instinctual life, persists, and that it was necessary. This too was needed, that breath and living might be. And then again, the spirit in a finite, ignorant world must rescue so its prison consciousness, which is forced out in little jets at quivering points from the inconscience sealed infinitude. So that's this life emerging out of the inconscient in little jets. And in those little jets, it must gather mass and then look up towards the light, towards the divine light. So that's the process that it's undergoing. And this is the law of our ignorant world. So we stop there for today.
Ascending slowly with unconscious steps, a foundling of the gods, he wanders here like a child soul left near the gates of hell, fumbling through fog in search of paradise.
Thanks to Sri Aurobindo.